last month, I made a video where I talked about COINTELPRO, which was the secret U.S. government plan to infiltrate leftist groups in order to discredit and disrupt them. This went on in the 1950s and 60s, more or less. I specifically brought that up in reference to the Trump administration's, at that time, recent open admission that the FBI and other intelligence services should focus their efforts on countering individuals and groups who display what they considered anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. Recently, I've seen a number of people who think that they have discovered the first secret fascist agent trying to pass as a progressive, and his name is Graham Platner. He is the ex-Marine who is currently running to secure the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate in Maine, hoping to unseat the Republican incumbent Susan Collins. Platner got a lot of positive press amongst progressives earlier this year when he launched his campaign, thanks to his very direct criticisms of the current state of the Democratic Party, of Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people and the oligarchy, as well as his open support of platforms like Medicare for All and LGBTQ rights. He also clearly had a lot of money and influence behind his campaign that really helped him get popular very quickly. Platner is, of course, not without his opponents, though. Not just Susan Collins and the Republicans, but also the other Democrats that are hoping to run against Collins, like Janet Mills, the current governor of Maine. His political opponents attacked Platner first by releasing his Reddit account history from a few years ago. This was originally reported by CNN, who transcribed posts like how Platner called cops bastards, said that white Maine residents were stupid and racist, and how he lamented that the wars he fought in, Iraq and Afghanistan, were pointless. I'll be honest, my initial reaction to those was, okay. There were definitely some problematic things in there, though. I don't think it's helpful to refer to rural people as dumb and racist as a whole. He also uses the R word quite often, and he also at one point said women should take better precautions if they don't want to be raped. But Platner apologized to CNN directly and also in this video.
Hey all, it's Graham here. As you've probably seen, there's a story that's broken about comments I made on Reddit in an earlier part of my life. As I read through them, I read things that I absolutely do not agree with. I read through and I see things words and statements that I abhor. I also see the trajectory of my life. When I got back from Afghanistan in 2011, I stayed in the Army for another year. I got out in 2012. Some of the worst comments I made, the things that I think are least defensible, that I wouldn't even try to defend, come from that time. I had spent the bulk of my 20s in the infantry, deploying overseas, fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. The infantry was a very male-dominated place. It's a very masculine world. When I was in, women weren't allowed in the infantry. It's changed now, and that's a good thing. But when I got out, I still had the crude humor, the dark feelings, the offensive language that really was a hallmark of the infantry when I was in it. I made comments that I'm not happy about, that I do not agree with, but they came from a time and place in my life. And as I read through the comments that were released, I can see myself changing. My language gets less crude, my thoughts and my feelings get a lot less kind of rough around the edges. I do get almost more disillusioned though, and it's important to know that this was a time in my life where I was struggling deeply. I got out of the Army in 2012. I had PTSD. I had depression. I had all of the things that come with serving in a war, in two wars, that I eventually began to not believe in at all. It left me feeling very unmoored. It left me feeling very disillusioned, very alienated, and very isolated. And I think like a lot of people, I went on the internet to post stupid things and get in fights and find some form of community in some way, some outlet for my feelings, for my rage, for my isolation. It wasn't until I found actual community that all went away. And the reason that I stopped posting on Reddit around 2020 and 2021 is because that was the point in my life where I had found this. I had moved back to my hometown. I'd found community. I'd started a business. I'd met someone to fall in love with. I'd been able to really begin to feel connected again. And not only did it let me feel connected, it also gave me a lot of hope. I had spent years being entirely isolated and feeling very, very angry about the system that had made me go through that experience. Coming back to Maine, moving back to my hometown, reconnecting with the community that I'm from, building real friendships, building real networks, real relationships with people, that helped cut my disillusion. I went from thinking that people were bad to knowing that people are good. I went from thinking that there was no hope to having nothing but hope. A hope that is rooted in the fact that it was in my community here in Sullivan, Maine, that I got to come home and build a nice life. That all changed for me, but it took me a long time to get there, and it was a very long journey. And along that journey, I was in different places that I'm not in now. I had different feelings that I don't have now. I had different thoughts and opinions that I certainly don't have now. But I am very proud of the person I am today. And it was that whole journey that got me here. And while I won't defend things I said in the past, I will just say that if it wasn't for that entire journey, I would not be who I am today, and I'm incredibly proud of who I am today. And so for those of you who have read these things and been offended, have read these things and seen someone that you don't recognize, I am deeply sorry. It's something that I see someone that I don't recognize either, not in who I am today. It is somebody that I do recognize though. Somebody who is struggling, somebody who is having a very difficult time settling into a society that he felt betrayed by and left behind by after having to go fight in Iraq and Afghanistan. I'm sorry for this. Just know that it's not reflective at all of who I am. I don't want you to judge me on the dumbest thing I ever wrote on the internet. I would prefer if people could judge me on the person I am today. And I just want to say thank you all very much for your time.
It seemed that most of his fan base accepted this as a heartfelt apology representing real growth, and they moved on from it. For about a week, because the next thing the opposition dropped was a photo of Platner without his shirt on. Actually, a whole video of him dancing without his shirt on, clearly showing a large Totenkopf tattoo. If you've ever seen any photos or videos of Nazis, particularly the SS, then you've probably seen this very specific death's head displayed prominently on their uniforms. Like the swastika, the Totenkopf had previously been used in other contexts, but like the swastika, once the Nazis used it, it became a Nazi symbol. Even if you've never seen any photos or movies with Nazis in them, you've probably seen the Totenkopf in a very famous meme.
The badges on our caps. Have you looked at them?
What? No. A bit?
They've got skulls on them. Have you noticed that our caps have actually got little pictures of skulls on them?
I don't,
Hans, are we the baddies?
Unlike the Reddit comments, which could be explained away as the edgy rantings of a young man who has since grown up, a large Nazi tattoo is a bit more problematic, especially when Platner revealed that he still had the tattoo 18 entire years after he first got it on his chest. The Nazi tattoo. I say that I find it problematic when someone has a prominent Nazi tattoo that's old enough to vote, but it definitely seemed at first that I was in the minority on that opinion, at least amongst other white progressives with large platforms online. The first apology for this tattoo I saw before any apology from Platner was from Emma Vigeland of The Majority Report, someone I personally liked, even though I did mildly criticize her recently for spreading unfounded conspiracy theories about the assassination of JFK. Vigeland wrote on Twitter how many people get tattoos that they thought looked cool but didn't understand the meaning of. How many vets took mercenary work for a period because the US doesn't support them? How many young men have shit posted online? Do we want an authentic authentic working class party or not? Hey, I thought we all agreed it was wrong to imply that the working class is stupid and racist. Whatever. Now, I have known a few people who got tattoos that they thought looked cool but didn't understand the meaning of. There are entire albums of people with tattoos in languages that they do not understand. What I think is less common is how many people get really prominent Nazi tattoos that they not only don't understand at the time that they got them, but never really thought to look it up in 18 years. I'm also not sure how many veterans take on mercenary work, but in this case, Vigeland is referring to Platner's stint working for Constellas, formerly and more famously known as Blackwater, in Afghanistan, after doing a tour there and 3 in Iraq. I can say it's strange to hand-wave the idea of an adult man joining a mercenary group just 10 years after they very famously committed a massacre because, I don't know, even his own mother refused to employ him as a dishwasher at the restaurant she owned, and his dad didn't need a secretary at his law firm. I mean, okay, I guess you gotta take a little mercenary work just to survive. I don't mean to pick on Vigeland here. She was not alone. Like I said, I felt like I was in the minority. Many white commentators I follow, like Ryan Grimm, Crystal Ball, Francesca Fiorentini, I saw them jump in to defend Platner pretty quickly. Meanwhile, it seemed like a lot of leftists I follow who are not white and who do not have large platforms, they were the ones saying like, hey, hold on, isn't that kind of fucked up? Platner, as far as I can tell as of this recording, never actually apologized. Instead, he simply explained that he got the tattoo with his fellow Marines while they were drunk to celebrate being gunners in Fallujah and Ramadi.
Hey everyone, Grant Platner here. I want to talk to you about something. In 2007, when I was a young infantry sergeant in the Marine Corps, myself and some machine gunners I served in Fallujah and Ramadi with were on our 3rd deployment. We were in a naval vessel and we pulled in for a Liberty port in Split, Croatia. We went ashore to do the thing that young Marines do, which tends to be carousing and sometimes getting tattoos. We wanted to get something that represented our jobs, our service, fighting in Fallujah and Ramadi as machine gunners. We went ashore, we found a tattoo parlor after a fair amount of heavy carousing, and we found a tattoo on the wall, a piece of flash that looked like a terrifying skull and crossbones. We thought it looked cool, and so we got it. I have had this tattoo for the last 18 years. I re-enlisted into the United States Army with this tattoo, where I was screened for hate and gang-related tattoos. I worked for the State Department as a contractor, where I got a full physical, which included screening my tattoos. I've gone through life with this thing, taking my shirt off, having photographs taken, videos taken. I've been very, very open in my life with the fact I had a skull and crossbones on my chest, because that's what I thought it was. It's come to my attention that it has a stark resemblance to a symbol that is used by neo-Nazis. And I want to say that was not the intent at all. And the idea that I've been going around with something like that utterly horrifies me. I know that symbols like this can be incredibly damaging to people, and the idea that I've had it all these years and it could have been read like that is incredibly troubling. I have lived a life dedicated to anti-fascism, anti-racism, and anti-Nazism. I think that racism and anti-Semitism are a long scourge on our society and a long scourge on our politics, and I think it has no place in our world. For that reason, I have gone and gotten it covered up. Last night, I went to a tattoo parlor, and I got this to cover up the skull and crossbones. It's a Celtic knot with some imagery around dogs, because my wife Amy and I have 2 wonderful dogs that we love a lot. This far more represents who I am now than even the skull and crossbones did, which I thought that it was.
He says that for 18 years, nobody ever said anything. Not the military who screened him before his last tour, not anyone at any of the places he took his shirt off at, not the former acquaintance who told Jewish Insider that Platner said, "Oh, this is my Totenkopf," in a cutesy way, not Platner's former political director who told journalists that he knew about it at least a month before it was publicly leaked, and certainly not any of the people on this Reddit thread in r/combat footage in which a user posts a photo with the headline "Battle Weary SS." A commenter asks how you can can tell they're SS. Someone replies, the Totenkopf on the dude first on the left is a good clue, which triggered a discussion of whether or not it's cringe for US military members to wear skulls, like the Punisher skull, to which Graham Platner responds, when I was in Ramadi in '06 as a Marine grunt, the SEAL platoon we worked closely with for the deployment all had the Punisher skull spray painted on their armor carriers. There's no question it's far more prevalent on all the dumbass grunt style and 9-line shirts these days, but the team's definitely adopted it for a while. Also, no one pointed it out to him in this Reddit thread from 2020, in which a user posted a photo of a Vegas cop with a Nazi SS tattoo, which Platner defends by saying they have no idea what they're talking about because he assumes that that man has been in the military as a sniper where it was normal to get that particular Nazi tattoo as a keepsake. This is the point in the timeline when I started seeing some leftists online argue that Platner is a government plant for COINTELPRO too. He's obviously a secret fascist who is only pretending to be a progressive so that he can win this election and then hand the Senate back to MAGA or else somehow delegitimize the left. Or maybe this very infighting that we were engaging in was the purpose in and of itself. And that's the point where I had to log off, spend a weekend with my dog foraging for mussels and exploring tide pools during a historically low king tide before coming home and making this very video. Now, everything I've talked about up till now has been reported facts, so here's where I offer my opinion as a leftist and a debunker of misinformation. No, Graham Platner is not a secret Nazi government plant on a mission to disrupt the left. As I said in my video on COINTELPRO, research shows that COINTELPRO wasn't actually very successful because leftists tend to be kind of smart and right-wing government goons tend to not be, and also to have no idea how to blend in with leftists. And as problematic as Platner's Reddit history is, it goes back many years and it does show a lot of left-leaning opinions. I guarantee you that no one in 2018 was paying an oyster farming ex-Marine to post vaguely lefty things on Reddit in between his posts asking why Black people don't tip in preparation for a Senate run in 2025. I also don't think that Platner is a secret Nazi. No, I do not think it's normal for white men to go through a Nazi phase, as a lot of people tried to tell me on social media. What I do think is normal, unfortunately, is for privileged white men to volunteer to join the military, to have an adventure and kill brown people, get drunk and get a tattoo without caring what it may mean besides, yay, I kill people. And when they find out that it is in fact a Nazi tattoo, they just don't really care. That's it. That's how deep it is. They don't care. They don't think they'll ever face consequences, not for the imperialism, the violence, the racism, the misogyny, and no, not even the Nazi tattoo, because they know there will always be another white man in those Reddit comments explaining it's not a big deal. We just don't understand what it's like to be in the military. Calm down. Now, I don't live in Maine. I don't get to vote on whether or not Graham Platner or anyone else represents that state after the midterms, but I do still get to offer my opinion, and it is this. The left should reject Platner, not because he's a secret CIA plant, not because he's a secret Nazi, but because, in my opinion, he's a very obvious idiot and a liar who makes the left look like shit. Part of Platner's excuse for not knowing his Nazi tattoo was a Nazi tattoo is because he says the military vetted him.
I re-enlisted into the United States Army with this tattoo, where I was screened for hate and gang-related tattoos.
But in this Reddit post from 2019, Graham Platner himself says that he tried to do a fourth tour in the Marines because he was bored after college, but he ran into trouble because of a forearm tattoo he got that hadn't been grandfathered in when the Marines instituted new rules in 2007, which is around the time he got his Nazi tattoo. So he switched to the Army where, quote, they didn't give a shit about tattoos. So is he lying now when he says that the Army vetted his tattoo and found it to be okay? Or was he lying in 2019 when he said that the Army doesn't give a shit about tattoos? Either way, he's a liar, but I can't see any reason for him to have lied in a random Reddit post 6 years ago. Can you? When Ryan Grimm asked Platner about how he responds to people who have trouble squaring his seeming progressive stance with the fact that he voluntarily spent time with Blackwater, here's how Platner responds.
Like, how does someone with your worldview end up working for Blackwater? He said you touched on this a bit during your last appearance on the show when you talked about your U.S. military service, but we didn't go into much into this, the State Department security contractor. So who did you work for, and why? And for people who are skeptical of American empire, why should that not be disqualifying?
So I never worked for Blackwater. This is I've been, like, I see this everywhere and I'm always like, oh, for God's sake. The company that we all know is Blackwater, the one that Jeremy Scahill wrote about back in the late 2000s. That company, Eric Prince's little kind of warlord fantasy, that company essentially went away after 2012.
And that is just a lie. As I mentioned earlier, Platner worked for Constellus, which is Blackwater. If you go to the Constellus Wikipedia page, it says Blackwater. That's because, yes, they restructured and changed their name shortly after their first massacre, or at least, the first publicly known massacre. Eric Prince, the guy with the, quote, warlord fantasy, as Platner says, did resign as CEO, but he stayed on at that time as chairman of the board. The new company did not go away in 2012. They merged with other mercenary groups under the umbrella of Constellus, which is what it was called when Platner joined. In 2015, reporters discovered that Constellus mercenaries had been hired by the United Arab Emirates to kill the Houthis in their ongoing battles in Yemen, as described in this Guardian article that, I'm sure much to Platner's chagrin, refers to the contractors as Blackwater. As of 2016, outlets were still referring to the mercenaries as Blackwater when Yemeni forces managed to hit a Saudi-led base with a missile, killing an American general and 200 Sudanese Blackwater mercenaries. I'm sure Platner sent them a strongly worded letter to edit their copy to read Constellus. It is wildly dishonest to respond to that question with, oh, duh, I never worked for Blackwater, idiots. The honest way to answer that question is to explain why you joined Constellus, what you did for them, and how you feel about it now. To do otherwise really makes you seem like a shady-ass lying little bitch. The honest way to explain why you have a Nazi tattoo on your chest is to admit that you didn't think it was a big deal until your opposition was going to use it to sink your campaign, not to pretend that you spent 18 years never noticing that the giant tattoo on your chest looks exactly like the emblem on the hats of the bad guys in like 40% of TV shows and movies. And for fuck's sake, apologize. By lying like this on several key issues, Graham Platner looks like an idiot, and he encouraged prominent leftists to apologize for him, which makes them look like idiots who are also hypocrites. They weren't saying, wow, that's a dumb tattoo, he should apologize and remove or cover it up immediately. They were saying, it's fine, stop being so weird about Nazi tattoos. Literally, I used to watch the Majority Report every day, right up until this episode.
Platner joined at 18 in 2003, sometime right after high school. Got the tattoo, according to him, in 2007. He's in his early 20s. And the idea that, these guys in their early 20s, even now, much less 20 years ago, would have been so brushed up on their Nazi symbolism that if I were to take them into a tattoo parlor, here or abroad, and they walked in and looked at the flash wall and said, is that a Totenkopf? I would have thought you were a Nazi if you did that. If you knew what that was. Because That's weird as shit. Why would you know that? Okay, Adolf, calm down.
Okay, so knowing when something is Nazi iconography, that's a red flag. But tattooing Nazi iconography on your chest and leaving it there for 18 years is not a red flag. Cool, got it. That's embarrassing enough, but what I really want to highlight is what Sam says a minute later.
My own personal opinion is that he probably figured out what it was several years ago, but was also like, well, it's not like I can justify this to me, speaking to himself, and anybody who knows me knows I'm not a Nazi. So am I really going to go and pay for this thing to get all screwed up? That's my guess.
So you agree? You agree that Graham Platner is probably lying about not knowing he had a Nazi tattoo? Sam comes to the same conclusion I did, but he doesn't go the extra mile, the extra 12 inches, to wonder what it means to support a politician who lies that easily about a Nazi tattoo. He knew he had a Nazi tattoo. He knew he would face no consequences for it, and then he lied about it when he was finally facing consequences. That's your guy? And I'm sorry, I know it's unfair, but yeah, the right can be hypocrites and their base doesn't give a shit. But the left does give a shit. I give a shit. I honestly can only roll my eyes now when these people I used to respect call out Republicans like Pete Hegseth for having these fascist-looking tattoos, or even Elon Musk for doing a fascist-looking arm movement. You have to decide, does it mean something or doesn't it? Is it just a shitpost or isn't it? I know that it's particularly tough because progressives are so beaten down by the Democratic Party. They block our candidates. They have deep pockets through AIPAC to fund rivals against progressives. And yes, to do research and release damaging information to the public. It's so difficult to find politicians who have the financing to win and who support platforms like Medicare for All and, crucially, ending the genocide of Palestinians. But I just don't think that this is how we win. Because look at the best possible scenario for these Popedy's nerfed leftists. Platner wins the primary and goes up against the Republican incumbent. Now AIPAC can throw all of their money at Collins. And do you know what the message is going to be in her favor? It's this nice moderate lady against an ex-mercenary who had a Nazi tattoo on his chest for 18 years. Oh, he's against Israel? Of course he is. He has a Nazi tattoo. It damages the Palestinian cause for us to elevate this man when one of the most convincing arguments Israel has in their arsenal is that all people who oppose them do so because of anti-Semitism. Look at Candace Owens, look at Nick Fuentes, and now look at the latest progressive darling, Graham Platner, a man who proudly took his shirt off in public to show his Nazi tattoo for 18 years until it became politically detrimental, at which point he covered it up from some artist who can't even draw a fucking circle, let alone a circle big enough to actually cover up the Nazi tattoo. Again, do I think Platner is a Nazi, an anti-Semite? Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so. I do know that he is a walking PR disaster, and platforming him removes prominent leftists' ability to rightfully call out anti-Semitic dog whistles and outright fascist bullhorns on the right at a time when those things are only getting worse and making life much more dangerous, not just for Jews, but just like during the Holocaust, for all marginalized people, which is probably why it's only been marginalized leftists I've seen speaking out against Platner. If Platner actually cared about advancing progressive policies and ending the genocide, the election's a year away. He can take all of that funding he has and hand it over to someone who's just as committed to pushing the Democrats to the left, but who hasn't branded themselves with anything representing a genocide. Or, my God, at least someone who can apologize if they did. That's where the bar is. The bar is in hell, and we are still tripping over it. Also, would it hurt to ask for someone with a week or two of experience in politics? Seriously, I guess this is just life, but I miss the times when, for the most part, you had to at least spend some time on the school board or the city council before you ran for the fucking U.S. Senate. Okay, sorry, I had to get all of that out of my system. Here's my cute dog and the tide pools. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.